Hi everybody, this is Humanities 2172 online. We are still in Frankenstein. We are in chapters 13 to 18. And then after today, we have one more day of Frankenstein, and that's Thursday. I'll post a video, but also on Thursday, I will be posting the test. And the test is going to be 2 questions. You will pick one of them, and you will write a 2-page paper using your book, using the lectures, and you will turn that paper in a week from tomorrow, so before next Thursday. So you'll have a week to do it. You'll have 2 questions. You pick one. You'll have the book to do it. So I expect that your test will have quotes from the text. I expect that it will make direct references to the topics in the videos, because your work at this point is to read the book and watch the videos. So I will expect that you can construct an essay that reflects that you have been both reading the book and watching the videos. Hope you're well. It's outside, it's nice, it's a little windy. Last time we talked about the Gothic, and then I sort of switched gears and talked about Victor and how useless he was as somebody who takes responsibility. So I want to go back and hit the Gothic now. Let's go to page 51. I think this is back in chapter 7. You remember the Gothic is an offshoot of Romanticism that focuses on death and decay, negative emotions. Usually the Gothic loves ruins. They love strange family situations, sometimes sort of incestuous, the same way we have here where Victor is going to marry his adopted sister. But the Gothic also loves these old ruined castles, right? Which we're gonna, and old ruins, not unlike Ozymandias, which was the poem we read by Percy Shelley. Let's look at this, page 51. I love this. This is something that later on writers like Mark Twain will make a lot of fun of the Gothic for their focus on this stuff. But on page 51, Victor is back home in Geneva at the Frankenstein house, and he looks up on the wall and he sees a portrait of his mother, Caroline Beaufort. He says, I gazed on the picture of my mother, which stood over the mantelpiece. This is page 51 at the bottom. It was an historical subject painted at my father's desire and represented Caroline Beaufort in an agony of despair, kneeling by the coffin of her dead father. I don't know if you guys have any family portraits, but we do not have any family portraits that include kneeling by the coffin of dead people. I do know in my family, you'll sometimes be looking through like my grandmother's or my great aunt's of like photo albums, and then you'll see a picture that they took of like someone after they had died, years ago. Hopefully not recently, but it just shows you here, it's a little strange, but it just shows you here this focus on death. Like the one portrait he has of his mother, she's kneeling by her dead father's casket. If we were to go over to 64, it's another one of those instances where he's up in the mountains, and we talked about in Romanticism what is in the text described as the nature outside in the world is also what's going on inside the characters. But among these glorious mountains outside Geneva, the Alps are also, as I ascended higher, these ruins. The valley assumed a more magnificent and astonishing character. This is the bottom of 64. Ruined castles hanging on the precipices of piney mountains, the impetuous aura of cottages every here and there peeping forth from among the trees, formed a scene of singular beauty. And then from today's reading over on page 112, he's now back in Germany, and there's more ruined castles hanging on the edge of these mountains. What does this mean? It just means that the Gothic in this book is setting a mood, and the mood it is setting is one of danger, of menace, of decay, of darkness. It is a story that is meant to have that kind of horror-y mood, horror feel. Now, this is really before there was anything like horror the way that we understand it. This is before Edgar Allan Poe even. Certainly it's before all the kind of horror movies that we know about. But this is in literature the creation of this genre, one of the first big books in the Gothic genre. And so it sets a mood with these paintings. It sets a mood with these ruins. It sets a mood with the way it focuses on these very negative feelings and emotions. Like by the end of this section that we read today, there's supposed to be a wedding, and Victor maybe is going to create a creature for the other creature, like a female creature, to go with his first creature, but we know that those are not going to have happy endings. We know that they're going to be a big mess, okay? So the second thing I want to focus on today is the question of a human being in this book. Go to 8485. This is, I think, in chapter 13. We talked about the creature. He's born the same way anybody's born. Immediately, the father, Victor, the creator, rejects him. Remember, the creature kind of reaches out. It could be that he's menacing Victor, but I always think of it as more like it's a baby reaching out. He's innocent, he's helpless, he doesn't know anything, and he's reaching out to his father, to his creator, to his parent, to his caregiver. And of course, he's rejected, right? And so then he has to learn for himself what a human being is. And we talked about 2 videos ago, maybe your last video, in fantasy, in science fiction, whenever there's a non-human character, like a robot, or if there's like, on Star Trek, there was like a Vulcan, right? Those are just asking questions about what it is to be a human being. It's not like the question of, Commander Data or the Cylons or Westworld or whatever it is. It's not like those are really talking about what is life like for a robot. All they're doing is projecting or reflecting that question. What is it like to be a human being? Let's go to 8485. He has been listening to the DeLacy family, and of course the DeLacy family is a family in the romantic novel and romanticism, so that they have these ridiculous backstory, all this intrigue. The French merchant, and they lose their position because they want to help the daughter of like the Turkish merchant or whatever. It's like all these convoluted stories. This is very common in romanticism. Nobody's like somebody who just grew up in Des Moines and like went to high school and then became an insurance salesman. It's always these like outlandish stories. And so the DeLacy family's outlandish story has landed them in exile from France in the German woods. And here he's been learning as Felix DeLacy teaches his fiance, Safie, as Felix teaches Safie the language and all of these stories he's been learning. The creature has, from his place where he kind of spies on them, he's been learning these stories too. So he's learned to read, he's learned manners, he's learned speech, he's learned all these things by watching Felix teach Safie these things. There's a great paragraph in the middle of the page here on 84 about, I've been talking a lot about the romantics and ethnicity. There's a great paragraph on that in the middle of 84, but if we go to the bottom of 84, he says, "These wonderful narrations inspired me with strange feelings. Was man, indeed, at once so powerful, so virtuous and magnificent, yet so vicious and base?" That's a great question. "He appeared at one time a mere scion of the evil principle, and at another as all that can be conceived as noble and godlike. To be great and virtuous, man appeared the highest honor that can befall a sensitive being. To be base and vicious, as many on record have been, appeared the lowest degradation, a condition more abject than that of the blind mole or harmless worm. For a long time I could not conceive how one man could go forth to murder his fellow, or even why there were laws and governments, but when I heard details of vice and bloodshed, my wonder ceased, and I turned away with disgust and loathing." Over on the next page, 85. Let's start the middle of that top paragraph. He says, "But what was I? Of my creation and creator I was absolutely ignorant, but I knew that I possessed no money, no friends, no kind of property. I was besides endued with a figure hideously deformed and loathsome. I was not even of the same nature as man. I was more agile, could subsist on a coarser diet. I bore the extremes of heat and cold with less injury to my frame. When I looked around, I saw and heard of none like me. Was I then a monster, a blot upon the earth from which all men fled and who all men disowned?" Now, like almost every villain that we know of. I'm trying to think if there's another example of a villain, but like almost every villain, the creature here sees himself as like separate from everybody else, different from everybody else. You could put Satan in this category from Paradise Lost. You could put Iago in this category from Othello. The bad guys always don't fit in, right? That's just the nature of the bad guy. Joker, I am not up to date on who the bad guys are well enough to know who to compare this to, but you're getting my drift. Kylo Ren, he doesn't have a ton of friends. He doesn't have like friends from high school, right? He is like a solitary figure. Even the guys that he should be buddies with, he gets in fights with them and he force strangles them or whatever. Those are Star Wars references. But the idea here is that he sees himself as separate, but there's a time when the creature can't conceive of himself as evil. And what we see pretty fast is that his plan, which is to ingratiate himself to the DeLacy family, he's going to wait till everybody's out. The old man DeLacy is blind. He's going to go in, befriend the guy before he can have a chance to be disgusted by him. And then what we see is that goes horribly wrong, right? And that's like 96, right at the bottom of 96. He's tried to show kindness to these people, and he's learned kindness from them, and then they turn on him, okay? And so what happens to him is he goes, as he says, from being this kind of Adam in Paradise Lost to being like a Satan in Paradise Lost. So he goes from being this like creature that sort of wants to do the right thing to somebody who makes evil his good. And these are all phrases you should remember, okay? And then there is this like thing after thing, this event after event where the creature is misunderstood and abused. He gets thrown out of the DeLacy's cabin, they come after him, and then he burns their house down. On page 101, he saves this girl from drowning. Boom, they shoot at him, right? It's like, come on. So he has been like good because he was treated well, or at least he imagined that he could be treated well, and he's turned bad because he's been treated poorly. And then we learn at the end of this section, or I guess the middle of this section, is that he is also the killer of William Frankenstein. As he rushed out on the day of his birth, he had the lab coat on, had Frankenstein's pockets, papers in the pockets, so he's learned about how he was born. He learned the name Frankenstein. So when he sees this creature, this little William Frankenstein, and he hears his name Frankenstein, he's mad and he kills him, right? So I see that I've got like a minute and a half left. All this to say, if we were in the room together, what we would do now is we would talk about that idea. If you are born, if you are raised, if you live your life in rough circumstances, does it make an excuse for you to behave badly? Can you blame your tough upbringing for your bad decisions? I think most of us would say, this is from years past asking this question, I think most of us would say there's an age, there's a time at which your past is no longer responsible for the person that you are. That is, that you make the decisions about your life, not your upbringing. If there's one lesson I would like our Quest students to know, it is that they do not have to keep making the mistakes of their past, and they don't have to make the same mistakes their parents did, right? You have the ability, we all have the ability as adults in our society to choose for ourselves what our lives will be like. The creature here is stuck in this kind of cycle of, I was treated badly and so I'm going to be bad. We do not have to be in that cycle. We're getting near the end, but what he asks Victor for then is make me a partner, make me a companion, and I'm out of here. And Victor, at the same time, is about to get married to Elizabeth, and we'll pick up on that next time. So we've got these two kind of parallel tracks, Victor and Elizabeth, and then the creature and his potential new mate. Hope you're well. See you Thursday. Bye.